I'm Hartwig Fischer, Director of the British Museum, and I'm delighted to welcome you to tonight's Era of Reclamation talk. I invited Bonnie Greer to curate a project, and together we identify reclamation as a prevalent theme of our era. This is also an opportunity to listen and to learn as we move towards the great transformation of the British Museum.
This is a beautiful, beautiful June evening in London. And my dad was born in June, my late father, Ben Greer. He was a man of extreme elegance, I would say, and I'm going to say extreme because the second to the last thing he said to me on his deathbed was, "Bonnie, you see that suit in the closet?" So I went in the closet and there was this incredible suit in a suit bag with the shoes at the bottom, all polished, the tie. He said, "I want you to make sure I'm laid out in that suit. I want you to make sure I'm laid out in the suit. My tie is right, my shoes, everything." That was the second to last words my dad said. All of his life, he made sure that whatever he did, including working on a steel plant, making tin cans 6 nights a week for 40 years, he was what they call on the south side of Chicago, where I'm from, clean. And so this is kind of dedicated to him for me tonight. And I really want to talk to Christine and Lanre and talk with Hartwig about that resistance, about that beauty, about that elegance, about that defiance.
So Christine, after that wonderful dedication of our conversation to beauty and elegance as defiance, you as a creator of fashion, what is that to you? What is creating fashion for you? What is that offer you make?
When I'm designing, and actually when I'm curating, so the work I do now, I think it's about storytelling. I'm creating a story, I'm creating a dream. I'm entering into another life, another way of being, if you like, even in the act of designing.
In creating your things, in doing your thing, you do something for others. You offer them an opportunity to define themselves, right?
Yes, it's sort of almost giving them the tools. It's like a sartorial language, isn't it? So you're giving them the tools with which to say something about themselves, to say something about how they feel inside. And I think particularly when it comes to people of color, there's a power in fashion, which is almost like a soft activism or an everyday activism where you can say something about how you feel inside that might be different from what society is trying to tell you you are or trying to box you in. You can push against that through the way that you dress yourself.
I was thinking about one of the friends of George Floyd who said, and it was more moving to me than anything that was said about him. And I want to direct this to you, Lanre. This brother said, it was horrible to see George there, also being murdered, but also how he was always so pristine. His clothes were always beautiful. He was always presenting himself in a certain way. And to see him in the dirt like that, to see him, his clothes soiled. Lanre, what is that kind of desecration in a sense of or what does that mean exactly?
As a man, the only way I can find my balance is through confronting my feminine side. And that is the key for me. Feminine side, understanding that I can cry as a man, I can, the freedom that has given me. And of course, my mother being my greatest mentor and my wife, a powerful woman. And again, having 2 daughters and seeing them through me, seeing myself through them, made me understand my feminine side so much So I can understand that young man, that man talking about Floyd, his passion, his emotion, his pain, and seeing all that, and he can express that, and we all can see that. Not everybody can see it, but once you connect with your feminine side, gives you that balance, it opens up so much stuff for you. And you can see beauty in yourself. You can see you can see freedom, you can see elegance, that's the way I dress, the way I dress. That freedom is because I understand who I am and whose I am. And I like to be different, and that's very quintessentially Lanre. Difference, being unique. Every single person watching this program is unique. Can you imagine there will never be any bunny in the whole entire universe that could be like you? And that makes you unique. That makes you special. That makes you a masterpiece. That makes you a masterpiece, Christine. That makes you a masterpiece and a piece of the master. And that's how I see myself. I'm unique. I'm different. And I tend to show that regardless. I tend to dress differently. Anything I don't like to copy, anything copy is against my thinking. So that's the way I paint, and I express that in my painting. And that's where my passion is. I love to be unique, and I love that. So I can resonate to what Bonnie said about that gentleman who saw Floyd, and he could show his passion.
I always feel that Africa is kind of a space where we project onto, we invent, it is a real geographical space, of course, but there's another element to it that is very fascinating to me, that objects in a museum speak to, that those of us who are descended from enslaved people speak to. So how do you see when you look, because you're doing a big show next year, how do you see when you look, when you talk about gesture, you talk about cloth, you talk about movement? Lanre uses cloth, uses movement on his own body when he goes through the West End. I walk with him, I see people react. I see people looking at this Black man. He's got a line of clothes called, I call it the quiet part out loud, where he's got Black men wearing shirts saying, you know, I'm okay, don't be afraid of me. And the cloth that he's wearing, he's using the Kandaki images from the pieces, from the objects that are at the museum to express this masculinity. How do you work in this sort of environment? It's a very hot environment right now. How do you do that as a creative? How do you do that as an historian, a thinker, a teacher because you teach people as well?
I think for me, many things pop into my mind as you're speaking, Bonnie. For me, Africa, yes, of course, it's this physical space, it's the geographical region, but it's also somehow, for me, a feeling, it's a mood, it's a state of mind. And I think as someone in the diaspora, and when I work with the African creators on the continent, building this exhibition with me, I feel a sense of pride, and there's a sense of dignity in the room. And there's a sense of us all charting our own course together and putting Africa at the center. But it is this idea of this state of mind as well as this geographical region. You know, and there's this sense in which we now know scientifically that Africa is the birthplace of humankind. But I think that there's a sense in which Africa might be the rebirth of humankind as we're coming out of lockdown, as we're wrestling with issues about the environment and sustainability, somehow centering Africa during the research period for this exhibition. It's as though there is such potential to look at life in a different way if we tap into this idea of Africa as a state of mind. And it's more than, I think it's Nkrumah that said something like, I'm not African because I was born in Africa. I'm African because Africa is born in me. So although we're putting Africa at the center, the Africa that we're following and we're embracing is one that doesn't exclude, it's one that includes, because that's the nature of the continent, isn't it? You know, it's a continent where there are many, many different cultures, many different histories, many people passing through, many people setting up home. And you have to almost accept the fact, you accept that fact, and that's what makes it even richer.
Lanre, can you show us the fashion you made?
Let me see if you can see this.
Oh, wow.
That's royalty. For me, I'm a prince, I'm a king. I can be whoever I want to be. And the way I express that is through the way I dress. So seeing that shows you can be whoever you want to be.
You're curating the street, which I've always noticed about brothers, that it's always been the most wonderful thing to me. Brothers curate the street, even when it's a violent environment for them, even when they can't get a taxi cab, they're curating the street all the time, which is an act of resistance, is an act of defiance. Christine, what has been the impact of this pandemic from what you hear, what you see, your own experience on the industry itself? Because it's very hard for us to be in the industry. First of all, I mean, the industry. What have you noticed in your work and going around? How has this pandemic affected things? Also for us as creatives as well.
I mean, the fashion industry, through the friends that I still have that work in the industry, it's struggling because many organizations are closed down. So there's that, but then the reverse is happening as well. So smaller organizations that cannot, nimble organizations that can offer things online that are more unique or a bit different, are thriving. And I think there is also a difference to the way that we shop. I think that there's more conscious shopping, more kind of slow fashion, if you like, as a result of and maybe this was coming before, and maybe the pandemic has galvanized that movement towards slow fashion and conscious fashion, conscious shopping, if you like. And I think that what we'll see is something that becomes even more individualistic because of that, on the back of that.
It's been an incredible sort of journey in your boldness, your fearlessness, your scholarship, your fearlessness in the face of beauty. Because one of the things that happens to oppressed people, they take our beauty away from us. They try to do that. They try to take away our right to make beauty. They try to take away our right to think about beauty and to be in beauty. And you ain't having it, either of you. And I'm really grateful for that.